Sun nuts. Hey guys, tonight we're drifting somewhere in the ancient Pacific, a place where the sky is an ocean and the ocean never ends. You're rocking gently in a carved wooden canoe, an outrigger really lashed together with braided coconut fiber creaking with the rhythm of the waves. Warm, salt air kisses your face and the sun hangs low, tinting everything gold. You can feel the hush of isolation here. It's just you, your canoe mates, a sky full of stars, and the hush-hush whisper of the water. In your lap sits a crate made from palm wood slats. Inside, sweet potatoes. Lumpy, dusty violet-brown beauties. Not the most glamorous passengers, but out here, they're as valuable as gold, as sacred as fire. Because let's be honest, without them, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing where you all are drifting off to sleep from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The outrigger sways long and lean-built for distance, not comfort. The sea is wide and wild here somewhere thousands of kilometers from your home island. Your skin is browned, lips dry, muscles lean from the weeks of paddling and sun. But you're not alone. 6 others just as wind-chapped and salt-blasted as you are scattered across the vessel. One snoozes under a tarp of stitched leaves. Another is humming an ancient chant while carving a fishhook. And then there's you, gently rocking beside that wooden crate like it's your firstborn child. The sky overhead is massive, layered in streaks of crimson and mauve. The stars are coming out one shy pinpoint at a time. You can already pick out Venus. The others call her Evening Star. To you, she's more like a GPS that never needs charging. You're learning to read the skies now to feel your way across this watery road. But tonight, it's not the stars that hold your attention. It's the roots, the sweet potatoes. You lift one. It's knobby-veined with purplish hues wrapped in a woven reed pouch to keep it cool. If you squint, it almost looks like a sleeping seal. You give it a gentle squeeze. Still firm. That's good. A mushy one could mean rot, and rot spreads fast. Out here there are no supermarkets, no second chances. If your food fails, you fail. Why sweet potatoes, though? They're not even native to these islands. They likely came from thousands of kilometers away from the lush river valleys of what's now Peru and Ecuador. And yet here they are. And here you are. And the connection between the two, between root and human, isn't just practical. It's miraculous. You shift on the narrow wooden bench feet tucked under to avoid the spray. The guy next to you offers a strip of dried octopus. You take it, chew slowly. It's rubbery salty, not exactly dessert, but it'll do. You nod in thanks. Polynesian voyages weren't casual. These weren't pleasure cruises or fishing trips gone wildly off course. They were strategic, epic, often multi-generational odysseys, packed with supplies, seeds, tools, animals, dogs, pigs, chickens, people like you launched out into the blue, betting it all on discovery. On hope. And they didn't bring just anything. No. They brought essentials. Taro breadfruit, sugarcane banana, and sweet potatoes, if they could manage it. The kumara, as some islands called it. A crop so stubbornly tied to life and sustenance that you'd sail across an ocean just to plant it in new soil. You check your stash again. All seem fine. No rot. No blackened skin. One has a suspicious patch, but it still smells earthy, not sour. You tuck it deeper in the crate's shadow. You whisper a little apology to it just in case. Around you, the sea begins to still. Twilight is settling. The sails woven from pandanus leaves flutter gently. Someone calls out from the front, gesturing. It's time to rotate the lookout. You stand knees stiff but balance like you've done this forever. You clutch the crate briefly, then pass it to another crew member. Carefully, reverently. Sweet potatoes weren't just food, they were culture. Identity. They had names, lineages, songs. You could trace your grandmother's garden plot by the flavor of her kumara. You could recite your ancestors by the variety they passed down. Some even believed certain tubers carried the spirits of those who had grown them. Chew on that next time you're peeling one in your kitchen. Modern archaeologists still argue whether Polynesians sailed to South America and brought sweet potatoes back, or if the potatoes floated to the islands themselves. It's one of those scholarly food fights that might never be resolved. But here now, on this moon-silvered ocean, none of that matters. You're just grateful to have them. Night falls. The ocean darkens, but the stars blaze brighter. The canoe glides. Your belly settles. And somewhere deep in the crate's warm shadows, the sweet potatoes continue their quiet, miraculous journey just like you. The wind kisses your cheeks as you trade spots with the lookout sliding to the front of the outrigger. The horizon ahead is featureless, just water sky and the whisper of your ancestors if you're lucky. But in the still of this vast nothingness, you begin to remember. You didn't just wake up at sea one day with a lap full of root vegetables. No, this voyage started moons ago, back when the village council lit the sacred torches and spoke of a need, a hunger. Not just for food, but for land. For the promise of something more. Your island had grown crowded. The pigs fouled the water. The yams grew smaller. Tempers flared at market over bundles of taro. So, the elders did what they'd done for generations. They pointed to the sea and said, "There. That way." You remember standing on the beach, younger than you feel now, clutching a calabash full of dried fish and sweetened coconut. Your mother pressed a charm into your hand, shark tooth, strung with turtle shell, and told you not to come back until you'd found a new home. Comforting, right? The canoes were already lashed and ready, their hulls coated in shark oil sails, tight and proud. You helped load them bundles of banana gourds of fresh water, even a squawking rooster or two. But most importantly, the slips of life sprouted taro-wrapped yam cuttings and those sweet potatoes. Treated like royalty. They got the shade, the best baskets. You were told not to speak over them. Navigation. That was where things got really weird. You thought steering would involve maps, compasses, maybe a star chart or two. But your navigator, an old woman with sun-leathered skin and tattoos like tide marks, laughed when you asked. She said you'd feel the ocean like you'd feel hunger, that the wind was a tongue, the birds were gossiping aunties, and the clouds were lazy liars, but they still told stories. If you listened, you watched her one night crouched on the hull, fingers splayed to the swell. She muttered something about echoes in the water. You didn't ask again. You were the youngest of the crew. You offered your arms and back, not your wisdom. You paddled when told tied knots until your fingers blistered and carried bundles of food into watertight holds lined with palm bark. The smell of those storage pits still clings to you, damp, smoky, pungent, with root starch and old salt. Your job above all was to care for the kumara. Keep them cool out of direct sunlight. Rotate them to prevent bruising. Check for mold. If one showed signs of softening, you had to isolate it immediately. Think of it like babysitting, except your babysitting is the linchpin of future civilization. You think back to the farewell night, the dancing, the drums, the taste of roasted pig crackling and sour breadfruit, beer. Everyone pretended it was a party, but it wasn't. It was a goodbye to comfort, a surrender to risk. People don't voyage into endless ocean because things are going great. They go because something's ending, or something's not enough. Historians still argue whether these voyages were forced migrations, escape plans, or simply the human itch to explore. Whatever the reason, you can say this much: it was terrifying, but also exhilarating. Like cliff diving. Except instead of falling a few meters, you're sailing off the edge of the world. After days at sea, the novelty wore off. You got used to the slap of waves against wood, the shrill cries of seabirds that never landed. You started dreaming in blue and gray. You could smell weather shifts before they arrived. You could hear when someone on the canoe shifted weight, even with your eyes closed. One day a storm hit. Not your run-of-the-mill drizzle. A proper tantrum. The sky turned to bruised charcoal. Rain came sideways. Waves like houses crashed over the canoe. The old navigator screamed at the stars as if betrayal could be reversed by sheer volume. You held the crate like a life vest, cheeks numb, certain this was it. But it wasn't. You survived. The Kumara survived. The canoe, well, it lost a sail and half your water gourds, but she held. The next morning was eerily calm. No one spoke. The sea shimmered like melted glass. You took inventory of the roots. One was lost to rot. Another had sprouted slightly, its tiny green head poking through the weave. You stared at it like a miracle. Like hope, physically manifest. You tucked it into a dry pouch lined with sand. Your canoe mates said little, just nods, small smiles, and fingers to the sky in gratitude. Later that day, you carved your first fishhook and caught a silver-skinned flying fish on your second try. You grilled it over a small firestone plate and shared it with the man who'd helped you when your stomach turned inside out during the storm. By now you've developed your own rituals. Every morning you check the crate, speak a few quiet words to the sweet potatoes. Not prayers exactly, more like promises. Not long now, you whisper. Soon. Some nights, you even dream of land. You see cliffs lined with palms, waterfalls cascading into blue lagoons, and gardens bursting with green shoots. In these dreams, you're planting the sweet potatoes in rows, pressing each one into ash-black soil with reverence. A child runs past barefoot and laughing. You try not to get too attached to that dream. Reality is see more sea and the occasional squabble over dried bananas. But the roots keep you grounded, literally and emotionally. They're not just food. They're intention. They're the very reason you're afloat on this stupid, beautiful, endless blue world. And whether or not you make it to shore, they deserve a chance to grow. You wake to the smell of wet rope and roasted mollusk, stretching your aching limbs on the bamboo slats of the outrigger. The sea murmurs its lullaby beneath you, soft for now but always scheming. Beside you, the canoe creaks like a grumpy elder, reminding you of its age and your dependence on it. It's not just a boat. It's a legacy. And you're starting to realize what a ridiculous marvel it actually is. The canoe you're riding in isn't just any floating log. It's the culmination of centuries of quiet genius passed down through chance tattoos and someone yelling at you not to mess up the lashing. You helped build it. Remember, not all of it. Your village's master carver did the spine and the bowhead, but you wove the lashings, shaped the outrigger float, and learned how each piece worked like a living organ in a larger beast. No nails, no screws, just wood sinew cordage made from twisted coconut husk and a whole lot of sweat. Modern boat builders look at these things and scratch their heads. How did they survive typhoons? How did they cross thousands of kilometers of open ocean without splintering into toothpicks? The answer: flexibility. Your canoe doesn't fight the sea, it yields to it. Each joint can give like knees in a dance. The hulls curve with the waves. The crossbeams lashed instead of nailed shift slightly when the swell changes, preventing snapping. It's like sailing inside a giant wooden cat. Slightly twitchy, a little unpredictable, but incredibly graceful. And lightweight. You once saw 6 people carry a finished double-hulled canoe to the beach. 6. One guy was still chewing on a coconut the whole time. It's that lightness that keeps you skimming the water like a dragonfly. Of course, light also means every kilo of cargo counts. Which brings us back to the sweet potatoes. You recall the preparation, cutting each segment to exact size, weighing them with old fishing stones, balancing loads so that the canoe didn't tip like an impatient toddler. You could spend hours just tweaking your ballast. One time, a novice overpacked one side, and the canoe spun in slow, infuriating circles until everyone was ready to toss him overboard. Historians still argue over how Polynesians map distances without writing systems or precise measurements. Some suggest mental maps shaped like songs. Others think memory palaces based on body parts, knuckles for islands, arms for current strength. You don't know the academic terms, but you do remember sitting on the canoe frame while the navigator tapped her thigh and sang the path to Rapa Nui. It sounded like a lullaby, but turned out to be a survival manual in disguise. As you munch on some sun-warmed taro paste, you run your fingers along the canoe's hull. The wood is breadfruit springy, buoyant and oddly fragrant when heated. That's the main hull anyway. The outrigger float is made from a dense hardwood ironwood, maybe designed to resist rot and cut through chop. You lashed it yourself with 3 strands of braided hibiscus bark soaked in seawater and beaten flat with a coral stone. Took you hours. Your hands bled. Your instructor said good. That means you care. You smirk at the memory. Back then, everything was ritual and repetition. Now it's instinct. You could tie a tension knot blindfolded mid-squall with a fish slapping your face. And honestly, you probably have. The sails are another kind of sorcery. Woven from pandanus, leaves dried and cured over smoky fires, their diagonal weave creates a lattice of strength without weight. You watch the women of the village craft them rows of patient hands like birds working in synchrony. They sang while they wove songs older than names. When the wind's right, those sails make the canoe fly. You felt that sudden silent acceleration when the wind catches just so, and the hull lifts in joy. It's like the boat is alive and happy to be free. One guy said it felt like the canoe had a soul. Another said it felt like riding the back of a manta ray who just discovered espresso. Every part of the canoe has a name. Not poetic ones either, functional, serious names. The front beam, that's the Kai. The stern plate, the Hope. Even the bailing gourd has a name. It's mostly unprintable thanks to the sailor who named it after spilling fish guts on his foot. And you talk to the canoe, don't lie. Everyone does. You whisper to it during squalls. Pat it when it doesn't leak. Curse it when it dumps seawater into your food pouch. The canoe is your mother, your spouse, your therapist. You tell it secrets at night while the crew snores. It listens creaks and doesn't judge. There's a superstition, well, several, that if you mistreat your canoe, it'll sabotage you. Woodworms, unseen leaks, sudden inexplicable drift. But if you love it, if you treat it with care and gratitude, it'll find you the softest currents and warn you of reefs with a subtle tug. You're not sure it's true, but you are sure your last canoe didn't like you. This one, she tolerates you. That's practically affection. The sun climbs higher now, and the sea turns slick and clear like melted turquoise. You see fish dart beneath you, needlefish half-beaks, even a curious octopus trailing a tentacle up your shadow. You wave. It blinks once, then bolts like it owes you money. You lean back, listening to the groan of the wood, the flap of the sail, the slosh of the food gourd. This boat, this bundle of bark and string and prayers has carried you across an ocean, and all without a single drop of epoxy. You think of the elders who built the first canoes. How they must have stared at the sea with fear and hunger and maybe just a pinch of lunacy. They shaped logs, tied knots, and hoped. Every voyage was a question. Every arrival a thunderous answer. And now here you are in a floating library of ancestral knowledge, holding a crate of tubers and trusting a boat that talks back in creaks. Your stomach growls like a restless piglet. You rub it with the heel of your hand and glance sideways at the food gourd. You know, the one that's always a little too empty. Mid-morning sun glints off the waves, casting a million blinking eyes across the surface. Beautiful. Yes. Edible. Tragically, no. You reach down, pry the lid off the gourd, and peer inside like it might surprise you with a buffet. No luck. A few strips of dried fish, a pouch of fermented breadfruit that smells like gym socks soaked in vinegar, and half a coconut. You sigh. Lunch is going to be an experience. Rationing is an art on these long voyages. Everyone gets their share, but share is a relative term. You've learned how to chew slowly, how to make one strip of fish last through a full horizon scan. You're even getting good at pretending your stomach isn't trying to eat itself from the inside out. But you're not starving yet. You're managing. You've seen others falter before eyes sunk in movements sluggish, that slack-jawed stare of someone who's been running on fumes and fantasy. You're not there. Not today. You split the coconut, carefully scooping out soft meat with a shard of shell. It's chewy and vaguely sweet, like edible optimism. Across from you, one of your canoe mates is gnawing on a roasted clam, the last of last night's catch. Another is nursing a piece of candied banana made by boiling it in seawater and sun-drying it until it resembles a sticky brown rock. You make eye contact, and the two of you silently agree if anyone drops a morsel, it becomes communal property. The floor of the canoe is technically a neutral zone, like the international waters of hunger. Now and then, someone suggests fishing. It's a cruel joke. Fish love to appear when you're well-fed just to mock you. But when you're desperate and dangling bait, with trembling fingers, they vanish, like they have a meeting elsewhere. Yesterday, one guy swore he saw a whole school of tuna flicker past. He even swore in 3 languages, cast his net, and came back with seaweed and a look of betrayal. The ocean plays favorites. Still, food isn't just about filling your belly. It's about comfort, morale, memory. You bite into a strip of fermented breadfruit and instantly think of your cousin's wedding feast back home. They buried the breadfruit in hot volcanic stones for 3 days, seasoned it with sea salt and laughter, and served it in woven leaf bowls. Out here, it's just you, the tang of overripeness, and the faint taste of homesickness. There's a reason voyagers brought fermented food. Not just because it lasted longer, but because it changed over time. Evolved. Grew complex. Some believe it even spoke to the gods better that way. You're not sure about divine communication, but it definitely speaks to your gut, sometimes in accusatory tones. You glance back at the sweet potato crate. Still there. Still noble. Still judging your lunch. You've been told they're too precious to eat on the voyage. Seed stock, they said. Not snacks. And so you've watched them stroke their skins, whispered apologies for thinking about boiling just one. But you haven't. Yet. Historians still debate how often early voyagers actually dipped into their root reserves. Some argue they were strictly off-limits sacred. Others believe the rules bent when the situation got dire. After all, a well-fed crew has a better shot at surviving. And what good is a tuber if its guardians are dead? You're not at that point. Not yet. But the idea has crossed your mind. Especially when you catch a whiff of roasted root from your imagination. Some meals have been better. Like that time someone caught a triggerfish and you roasted it over a stone slab using coconut husk embers. Crispy, oily, perfect. You remember everyone laughing for the first time in days, grease on their cheeks, stars above, and salt in your teeth. Or the night someone made canoe pudding a mush of mashed taro mixed with honey and seawater steamed inside a leaf pouch. It tasted like the idea of dessert, not the real thing, but it was enough. It reminded you of birthdays. Of days when you didn't worry about water levels and moldy roots. You stretch out belly slightly more satisfied and look toward the horizon. Still nothing. But hunger has a way of sharpening your senses. You start noticing tiny signs, ripples that shouldn't be there. Birds dipping. Too frequently flashes beneath the surface. Maybe the ocean isn't empty. Maybe it's just playing hard to get. One of the older crewmates pulls out a tiny charm, something shaped like a fishbone, and kisses it before threading it through his hair. Luck, he says with a wink. You raise an eyebrow, but don't question it. You've eaten worse than pride on this trip. The rest of the day passes in slow waves of hunger and hope. You bait a line with dried crab meat, toss it in, and whisper promises to the sea gods. The bait floats for hours. Nothing bites, not even a nibble. The line feels like a joke. Just before dusk, someone calls out. Splashing. Movement. Everyone leans. A flying fish leaps arcs and thuds into the side of the canoe like a drunk tourist at a water park. It flops once, twice, then someone snatches it up, laughing like a madman. Dinner. It's not much. You split it 8 ways, a sliver each. You suck on the skin, gnaw the bones. It's enough to take the edge off, to remind you that the ocean isn't heartless, just selective. As the sky darkens, you pat your stomach and look again at the Kumara crate. Still untouched. Still patient. You nod at it silently, saying, "Not today, but thank you for being there." And as you drift off beneath a belly full of fish scraps and fermented mush, you dream of feasts. Not fancy ones, just roasted sweet potatoes, butter melted and steaming, pulled from a fire pit under palm shadows. You don't even need spices, just enough to make you feel human again. The night recedes like a pulled tide, and you find yourself blinking into a rising sun that turns the sea to glass. Morning on the canoe is quiet, everyone groggy, salt-dusted, bleary-eyed, but your eyes search the horizon with new hunger, not for food this time, but for signs. Because you're learning the language of the ocean now. You're learning to navigate, not with compasses, not with paper maps, just stars, swell sunbirds, and whatever the gods feel like whispering on the wind. You don't fully trust it yet, but the navigator does, and you're starting to trust her. She's awake, already crouched like a cat at the edge of the main hull, scanning the water, like it's a book she's halfway through. You shuffle toward her, ducking under a low-hung sail, and sit beside her in silence. For a while, she doesn't speak. Then she points, just a simple gesture. You follow her hand but see nothing. Then you feel it. The canoe rocks, oddly. Just a subtle hiccup in the motion. The swell pattern changes, slightly shorter intervals. You blink. Cross swell, she murmurs. Reef beneath. You squint harder. Still just water. But it feels different. The ocean is hinting. You're just not fluent yet. You want to ask how she knows these things, but instead, you sit and watch. She raises her arm palm flat, aligning it with the sun. Measures shadow on her wrist. Nods once. 3 hands west. Star house ahead. You pretend to understand. What she means is this. You're still on course. Your position aligns with the star path she plotted back when you left, a course etched into memory, not paper. She plots by timing the sun's path across her skin, by measuring the angle of the waves against the canoe's beam, and by listening to the world beneath the waterline. You've learned to track a few signs yourself. Like birds, frigates, and boobies don't sleep on the water. If you see them spiraling and diving, you're close to land, or at least to shallows. You also watch cloud formations. High flat clouds often cling to islands, even tiny ones. Then there's floating debris branches, bits of bamboo, dry seaweed. They drift from land, drift toward you. But your favorite guide, the stars, At night, the sky turns into a radiant map. The Southern Cross glides along its arc. Venus pulses like a candle in the wind. Even the Milky Way has direction. You learned to track constellations from your hammock as a child, pretending Orion was a fisherman and his belt was a net. Now, those stories are lifelines. You remember your first solo night watch. You were terrified of steering wrong, of drifting into nothingness. But the stars moved like clockwork, and your canoe followed their rhythm. You hummed under your breath those old chants about starlines and fish spines, and somehow the bow held true. Historians still debate just how advanced this non-instrument navigation really was. Some say Polynesians were the greatest wayfinders the world's ever known, able to cross thousands of kilometers with uncanny precision. Others think the success rates were more luck than method. You're not a scholar, but when you feel the canoe veer gently north as the morning sun climbs, you start to believe there's truth in both. The sea shifts again. A lazy swell from the southwest, longer, smoother, deeper. The navigator smiles. Canoe path, she says. You nod sagely and then immediately forget what that means. She explains anyway. Island out there. The current remembers. Still flows around its bones even when it hides. Canoe paths. Invisible roadways on the sea, created by islands' disturbing currents and winds. You'd never think to look for them. But Polynesians do. They feel them. You run your hand in the water. Yes, maybe it's cooler. Maybe the drag is different. Or maybe you're just pretending like a kid mimicking an adult's dance. There are other signs too. Your favorite smell. Seriously. Some islands give off a scent: damp leaves, blooming flowers, guano from nesting birds. Subtle, but real. You remember one morning when the breeze brought the unmistakable scent of smoke. Not fire, just the soft charcoal perfume of someone else cooking. You cried that morning. Just a little. The navigator offers you a sip from her water gourd. It's infused with taro leaf and something you can't name, earthy green, comforting. She gestures upward. Soon. Stars never lie. You're not so sure? Stars can be very misleading if you're bad at reading them. Once you mistook a cluster of fireflies for an island beacon. Everyone still teases you about Glowbug Island. But you're improving. You can read the high cirrus clouds now. You know what they mean when they sweep in low and thin weather shift. You can feel currents underfoot like vibrations. You even started marking your own body as a reference, pressing your thumb to your shoulder at dawn to remember wind angles. It works. Sometimes, the canoe gently rocks and you realize how little attention you've been paying to fear lately. It's still there, tucked behind your ribs like an emergency kit. But this knowledge, the feel of waves, the whisper of wind, the memory of stars wraps around it like gauze. You're learning to live with the unknown. And in that, there's peace. The sky above grows brighter, the swell calmer. Someone spots a bird flying low astern. It circles once, twice, then shoots inland toward the nothingness ahead. The navigator stands tall and steady. Prepare, she says simply. You grip your paddle hard, quickening. No shouting, no fanfare. Just that word. The word you've been waiting for. Land is out there. Maybe near, maybe not. But the signs are shifting. The swell remembers. The stars are guiding. The clouds are hinting. And you are ready to follow. You spend the day watching the sea like it's hiding a joke from you. The wind sighs soft and steady, rustling the sails just enough to keep the canoe moving, but not enough to demand any real work. It's a blessing, really. A lazy ocean day, the kind that makes you feel half asleep, half salty, and wholly weird. So naturally, it becomes the perfect time for canoe gossip. It starts with the guy near the stern, the one with the tattoo of a shark spiraling around his bicep. He leans back, chewing a strip of dried eel like it's gum, and mutters, "You know the gods prefer clams to crabs." You pause mid-bite. "Excuse me, clams?" he says, wagging his eel at you. More obedient. Sit there quietly in the sand, open when you need them. Crabs always angry, sneaky, bitey. You blink. That's your theology. He nods solemnly. That, and never trust a pig that smiles. Someone chuckles, and just like that, the day dissolves into a flow of tips, tales, and half-muttered nonsense. It's how voyagers pass the time between checking the sky, the sea, and your own slowly crisping forearms. You talk. And not always about sensible things. You learn that banana leaves make better umbrellas than you'd think if you fold them right, and tie them with sea grapevine. You learn that mixing turtle fat with charcoal makes a surprisingly decent sunscreen, though it smells like regret. You also learn from someone with far too much enthusiasm that boiled jellyfish can stop hiccups. You decide not to test that one. One woman, older, quiet, and always twisting knots in spare rope, tells you she dreams of building a floating garden. Just a raft, she says, with baskets of soil, sweet potatoes, taro, even sugarcane. She taps her temple. If the sea won't give, we grow. You love the idea. You also suspect it's slightly impossible, but you don't say that. Dreams are as necessary out here as dried food and hope. Another guy missing 3 teeth and still grinning like a child swears he once caught a fish with his ear. You ask how. He explains with a lot of hand motions, none of which clarify anything. You nod anyway. Then there are the survival hacks. Everyone's got one. Like making rope from soaked palm bark twisted against your thigh. Or cracking sea urchins for freshwater, spoiler don't. Or the trick of rubbing shark liver oil on your sandals to keep them soft, provided you're not wearing sandals made of banana peel, which someone once definitely did. Someone asks how to make sweet potatoes last longer. You perk up. This is your area of interest. You chime in, wrap them in dried grass, store them upright. Don't let them touch. Silence. Then the shark tattoo guy nods slowly. Smart. Like stacking eggs. Eggs roll, you mutter. Only if you're not careful, he says with a wink. Laughter follows. Not loud, not raucous, just the slow bubbling kind like warm broth in a clay pot. It makes the canoe feel smaller, closer, more human. As the sun climbs, someone shades the food crate with a sailcloth scrap. Another checks the lashings. Even on a lazy day, the rhythm of survival continues, constant, quiet, unquestioned. Bail the water, check the lines, monitor the shadows of the sweet potatoes to make sure they're not cooking in the sun like forgotten stew. Historians often overlook these moments, the slow, silly, salty parts of long voyages. The songs sung to pass time. The games of shell bounce played on deck. The quiet jokes. The boredom. They focus on navigation and survival, trade routes and agriculture. But you're starting to think, this is how you survive. Not just physically, but emotionally. Later, you take a turn scrubbing the side of the canoe. Why? Because barnacles are jerks and they add drag. You dangle off the edge, tied by a vine around your waist, scrubbing with a pumice stone while a guy on deck tells you stories about a spirit that lives in the barnacles and whispers curses through your feet. Comforting. Afterward, the sun sets in a blaze of honey and fire. You sit in a circle with the others. Someone lights a tiny fire in a shell lantern. The light dances across their faces, turning wrinkles into rivers and eyes into moons. A story begins. Not one you've heard. It's about a voyager who fell in love with a wave. Not a woman in the wave. The wave itself. They spoke in rhythm, danced in storms, and one day the wave carried him across the sea to a hidden island filled with gold-skinned children and breadfruit trees that sang lullabies. The wave came back, but the man stayed. Why, someone asks. Because the wave had to keep moving, the storyteller says softly. But he'd finally found somewhere to rest. No one speaks for a moment. Then someone farts loudly and ruins the mood. The circle dissolves into giggles and mock gags. That's canoe life, for you. Deep wisdom followed by digestive reality. You crawl to your corner of the canoe, roll into your woven mat, and hug your water gourd. The stars wink down. The sea murmurs like a bedtime tune. Someone's humming again. Maybe the navigator, maybe the wind. You close your eyes thinking not about survival, but about the people around you. The coconut oil philosophers, the barnacle storytellers, the dreamers of floating gardens. You think if the sea doesn't kill you, it might just turn you into something softer, stranger, wiser, or at the very least better at jokes. A gull screams overhead, not a sweet songbird trill or a poetic warble, a full-on banshee screech that yanks you from sleep like a splash of cold water. You sit up fast, heart-racing eyes scanning wildly. For a second, you think the canoe's sinking or a shark's trying to negotiate real estate rights. But then you spot it. The bird, circling, low, close. You blink. Then you see another, and another. Your skin prickles. The air feels different, lighter somehow, carried on a breeze that tastes faintly of green things of land. You scramble to your feet, wobbling on stiff knees, nearly knocking over a sleeping crewmate. He groans and swats at you. You ignore him. Because just then you see it. Not much. A sliver. A smear of green and brown on the horizon. It could be a trick of the light. It could be a dream. But it smells real. Your breath catches. Land, you whisper. Then louder. Land. The navigator is already up. She doesn't smile, but her eyes crinkle. Told you, she murmurs. Stars never lie. Now the others stir. Groggy, skeptical, salt-crusted. But when they look where you point, silence falls like a net. It's not close. Still hours away, maybe more. But it's there. No longer a rumor. No longer a hope disguised as a chant. Land. You break into motion. It's like someone lit a fire under the canoe. Everyone's suddenly busy, tightening lashings, securing the sail, checking the sweet potato crate twice over. The energy shifts from tired patience to taut, buzzing readiness. You're sailing fast now, angled into the wind. The sea grows choppier. The navigator adjusts the sail with practiced hands, squinting at the clouds stacking on the horizon. Storms often greet arrivals like the island wants to make sure you really want to be there. The birds lead the way. Frigates first, then turns. And finally, a squadron of naughties swooping like scouts. You can see debris floating past, bits of palm bark feathers, a gnarled branch that must have fallen from land no more than a day ago. Historians often highlight these signs as the final proof of navigational genius. You're too breathless to think about that. Right now, you just feel the hum under your feet, the canoe vibrating as if it's excited too. The navigator lets you take the steering paddle. You hesitate. It's a sacred task, usually above your rank. But she nods. You brought the roots, she says. You deserve the arrival. You grip the paddle. It's heavier than you expect, slick with salt and anticipation. The canoe answers your touch. Left, right, left again. You aim straight for the shadow on the horizon that's beginning to sprout, detailed trees, cliffs, maybe a beach. Still far. Time stretches. The canoe groans under the pressure of the waves. The sun climbs. Your arms ache. But you don't stop, because every meter brings you closer. Then the swell changes. It's hard to explain unless you felt it. The deep, slow rise beneath the canoe. A long pause, then a gentle release. A signal from below shallow water. You grip the paddle tighter. Another wave rolls under you, shorter now, sharper. And the color of the water shifts, from deep indigo to turquoise. It's like the sea is pulling back its veil. Then you smell it. Not just salt and brine. Earth, wet leaves, cooked air, smoke. You nearly cry again. Not because of the smoke, it's faint, but because it's home. Or it will be, if you can land. The navigator shouts something. You snap your head up. Reef. A jagged white line appears ahead, just under the surface where the waves break in sudden violent curls. Beautiful. Deadly. She waves you to angle starboard. You yank the paddle. The canoe leans, the outrigger lifting slightly. Everyone holds their breath. You skirt the reef edge, the roar of surf in your ears. The canoe bumps once like a warning nudge. Then the waves guide you into a lagoon, calm, quiet, clear as glass. The crew exhales as one. Ahead lies a beach, pale sand, clusters of coconut palms, rock ledges beyond, overgrown and unfamiliar. It's not a big island, but it exists. And right now, that's enough. You pull the sail down, easing into the shallows. The hull scrapes gently across coral grit. The canoe stops. Still. You're here. For a moment, no one moves. You all just sit there stunned, salty, sunburned, grinning like fools. Then reverently, you reach for the sweet potato crate. It's still whole, still perfect. You lift it like a sacred offering, wade through thigh-high surf and step onto the sand. It's warm underfoot, soft, real. You kneel. With slow, careful hands, you dig a shallow hole in the shade of a palm tree. The others gather around. Someone begins to hum. A quiet melody part, lullaby, part, prayer. You plant the first sweet potato, the roots of survival finally touching soil. The sand is still warm beneath your knees as you press the last of the sweet potatoes into the shallow earth. Not too deep, not yet. Just enough to give them shade to help them breathe after their long, bumpy ocean nap. You pat the soil over them like tucking in a child. There's something sacred in this act, even if your back is aching and your fingers are full of grit. You sit back on your heels and breathe. The others have joined you, kneeling in a crescent around the fresh-planted patch, eyes shaded against the midday sun. No one speaks. Even the birds seem to pause, Just the hush of wind through palm leaves and the soft hiss of tide rolling over coral rubble. These sweet potatoes, these kumara aren't just plants. They're a beginning, a flag without fabric, a declaration that you've made it and you intend to stay. This is how civilization starts, not with trumpets or monuments, but with a quiet hole in the ground and something tender tucked inside. Eventually, someone breaks the silence. The navigator murmurs a chant. It flows low and steady, the kind of song that feels older than trees. A prayer for growth, for roots that cling and vines that spread, for this place to give more than it takes. You repeat the words softly, even if you don't know them all. The meaning's in the melody. The others follow. It's a chorus of survival now. A song for the dead who didn't make it, for the seeds that never sprouted, for the ones who will eat these roots in seasons to come. And then, as if on cue, the sun shifts. A cloud passes overhead, a light breeze stirs, and you all rise gingerly like elders and step back from the garden. Well, the beginning of a garden. There's work to do. Of course there is. Someone starts digging a second patch. Another hauls over dried palm fronds for shade. You help build a low fence of driftwood, mostly symbolic. It won't stop pigs if there are any, but it'll keep you from stepping on the shoots by accident. Later, you find a patch of dark soil, soft and loamy near a cluster of banana trees. It smells rich, like promise. You scrape back the top layer with your hands and press your nose to the earth. Yep, this is where the best kumara will go. You mentally name it after your grandmother. Grandma plot, you whisper. As the others explore, you wander the edges of your new home. It's not big, but it's lush. A ridge of volcanic rock rises to the east, mossy and crumbling. There's a freshwater spring trickling from its base. Someone yells when they find it, and the whole group cheers. You cup your hands into the trickle and drink deeply. Cold, sweet, a miracle with every sip. You wonder if the island has a name, if it's ever been mapped or claimed or even seen before. Historians still argue whether Polynesians stumbled onto islands or returned to them guided by oral memory and tradition. Some believe they followed seabird migratory patterns. Others think they used the stars like ancient address books. You don't know the answer, but you do know this: if anyone has lived here before, they left no visible trace. Or maybe they just left behind roots. You find yourself digging again. Not for planting this time, just to look. You clear a small space near a thicket of ferns and scrape the topsoil away. Something glints. You freeze. It's nothing sharp, just a bead. A tiny disc of shell, polished and pierced. It winks at you from the dirt like a buried thought. You turn it over in your palm. Handmade, definitely. Could be ancient. Could be last year. You don't tell the others. Not yet. Just pocket it gently. A secret between you and the island. Later, you take inventory of your root stash. You count them like you're counting heartbeats. One by one, you whisper their names, if not actual names, then nicknames you've given them during the voyage. Big Lump, Speckle Skin, the Wrinkler. You know them better than some cousins. You place each in its own mound. Carefully spaced, just like you were taught. One of the older voyagers kneels beside you. She doesn't say anything for a while, just watches. Then softly she says, "If you're lucky, these will be here long after we're bones." You nod. The thought doesn't feel grim. It feels right. She leans over and presses her palm into the soil beside your newest mound. Leaves it there a moment, then stands. Now she says, "We find stones. Hot ones, because dinner isn't going to cook itself." You follow her down to the rocky shoreline. The tide's pulling back, revealing tide pools flickering with small fish and a couple of grumpy-looking crabs. You scoop up flat black stones, smooth, dense, volcanic. Perfect for heating. On the way back, you glance at your garden. Already the first mound is casting a little shadow. You squint. Is that a sprout? No, just your imagination. But soon. Maybe tomorrow. As the sun dips and smoke from the evening fire rises in soft curls, you sit in the sand and eat. Roasted mollusks, a scrap of leftover eel. Someone shares a fruit you don't recognize, tart, juicy, unforgettable. You eat slowly, barefoot in the soil that now holds your hopes. The kumara lie nestled just beneath the surface like sleeping ancestors. And you at last feel rooted. Smoke curls lazily into the twilight sky as the first root stew bubbles over the fire. You sit cross-legged beside the pit, watching steam lift from the coconut shell pot, the scent curling into your nose. Earthy, slightly sweet, and just a little charred. It's not fancy, but it's yours. The kumara, though still freshly planted and weeks from harvest, have inspired the meal. Tonight, it's a humble feast of taro, breadfruit, coconut cream, and wild greens gathered near the stream. No meat. Your traps came up empty, but someone found a cluster of edible sea snails, and into the stew they went, shells and all. You chew, slowly, letting the warm mush sit on your tongue. It's thick, gritty, satisfying in a way that goes beyond hunger. Food always tastes better when the alternative is not food. Across the fire, one of the older voyagers stirs her bowl with a stick and mutters, "You know they grow 'em bigger in the Andes." You look up. "Kumara," she says. "South America. That's where they came from. Before we ever saw them." A murmur rises from the others. Here it comes again, one of your canoe's favorite arguments, where the sweet potato really came from, and how it got to Polynesia. It's a mystery that historians still puzzle over. Did ancient Polynesians actually reach South America centuries before Europeans? Did they trade with indigenous peoples there and return with the precious crop? Or did the tubers float over on ocean currents like seeds in a bottle? The woman across from you picks a snail shell out of her bowl and flicks it into the fire. "I think we went there," she says firmly. "Traded fish hooks for potatoes, swapped chants, danced under different stars." Others aren't so sure. Floating tubers, someone mutters. Nature's message in a bottle. Happens all the time. And how'd they stay fresh? Comes a snort. You ever see a sweet potato after 3 weeks in seawater? It's soup. A few chuckles. The argument is friendly familiar. You've heard it a dozen times now. But tonight, something about it hits differently. Maybe because you're on land now. Maybe because you've pressed sweet potatoes into soil with your own hands. You poke the fire with a charred stick and speak up. "I think both are true," you say. Maybe some floated. Maybe some were carried. But either way, we knew what to do with them. That earns a few nods. A thoughtful silence. Someone starts whistling a slow tune that sounds like wind and bone. You stare into the fire and think about South America. About rivers, highlands, mountain farmers scraping soil into mounds. You picture a hand holding out a root to a stranger across language and ocean. Maybe it happened. Maybe it didn't. But the idea that a plant could be a bridge between worlds, that's too beautiful to dismiss. Sweet potatoes show up in archaeological digs across Polynesia, Easter Island, the Cook Islands, Hawaii. Carbon-dated remains suggest they were already here by 1000 CE, long before the Spanish showed up in South America. So someone did some serious traveling, and the word kumara, nearly identical in both Quechua and Maori. A linguistic breadcrumb trail across an ocean. You sip from your bowl and think of what that journey must have been like. Double canoes packed with warriors and routes slicing through the Pacific. Or maybe a single storm-tossed vessel lost and half-starved, drifting west with a tuber in a gourd. A survivor lands berries it prays, and it grows, because sweet potatoes are persistent like that. They don't need much. A little warmth, some damp soil, and they'll take root, just like people. Someone belches. The spell breaks. You grin and toss another stick into the fire. The flames flare. A breeze carries smoke toward the garden patch, as if blessing the new sprouts with the scent of their cousins stewing in the pot. Tomorrow you'll dig a few test holes. See if the soil's holding moisture. Watch for beetles. You'll build a windbreak from pandanus fronds. Maybe even carve a proper fence post with a turtle motif. Sweet potatoes apparently enjoy artistic company. The others drift into conversation again, but your thoughts are full of echoes. Of ancient voyagers and imagined meals. Of rivers that flow the wrong way. Of stars that tell secrets, if you know how to listen. You stand, stretch, and walk barefoot back to the garden. The moon is rising now, pale and wide, casting a soft glow on the mounds of earth. You crouch beside one, run your fingers across the soil. Still warm from the day. You whisper something. Not a prayer, just a promise. Grow well. We made it. Now it's your turn. In the distance, waves lap gently at the shore. The fire crackles. A sleepy lull settles over the camp. And somewhere perhaps in a high valley of Peru or a buried canoe on a distant island, the same roots sleep under the same moon. You wake to the rustle of leaves and the subtle panic of something snuffling through the food stash. You sit up fast, heart-thumping, hair wild, and reach for your paddle like it's a weapon. Not exactly a warrior's sword, but hey, intimidation's 80% attitude. Turns out it's a pig. A very round, very muddy pig who has somehow liberated half a banana bundle and is now rooting around in a basket of dried taro like it's brunch. Hey, you hiss, flailing your arms. The pig looks up with the serene defiance of a creature who knows you're too tired to chase him. He snorts, then waddles off into the underbrush, leaving banana skins and existential rage in his wake. You groan and look around. The others are waking too, some laughing, others swearing. This is the new rhythm life on land, and it's already full of hazards. You'd think once you reach the island things would calm down. But survival here is a whole new set of creative problems. No longer worried about storms or drifting into the void. You're now navigating a world of stinging ants, mystery fruit, and local wildlife that doesn't care how historic your voyage was. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but the camp's buzzing. Someone's boiling water near the spring. A couple of crew members are arguing over how to make a proper oven pit, and the navigator. She's drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick, muttering about wind shifts and tide pulses. You grab a gourd and head to the spring for water. It's colder than usual today, probably a blessing. You wash your face, scoop a drink, and stare at your reflection. You look wild. Sun-bleached hair, salt-tough skin, a developing scar over your left eyebrow from an argument with a low-hanging breadfruit branch. Nice. By the time you get back to the garden, the others are already working. 2 people are mounding soil. Another is weaving baskets for root storage. Someone's trying to smoke sea snails over a fire with limited success. And you're on pest duty. Again, because apparently something's been nibbling the garden. You squat beside one of the mounds and inspect the tiny green sprout just emerging. A single bite, taken clean off. You glare into the trees like the culprit's still watching. Could be insects, could be birds, could be the pig again. You make a mental note to invent fencing as soon as possible. Island life isn't leisurely. It's a full-time job. You learn to check the sweet potatoes every morning, gently pressing the soil, watching for rot signs of burrowing. You start identifying local plants. Which leaves make decent tea? Which ones cause your lips to go numb? Fun discovery, that one. You also learn about thirst. Not the kind you felt on the canoe, but a subtler version. The kind that creeps up after a day in the sun when the spring trickles slower, when your gourd doesn't seem to fill fast enough. It keeps you up at night even when your belly's full. Water becomes currency, protection, ritual. You begin guarding it with the same vigilance you once gave the Kumara. Then there's the question of safety from each other. You're not alone on the island, not just in the literal sense. The group you sailed with tight-knit during the voyage, bonded by terror and shared snacks. Now with land beneath your feet and resources limited, things shift. Subtle tensions bubble. Whispers about who's pulling their weight, who's eating too much, who's hiding smoked fish under their sleeping mat. One night, a shouting match breaks out over a misplaced tool and adds someone borrowed and forgot to return. The argument ends in silence. And the next morning, the tool reappears without a word. Historians speculate that these small-scale tensions shaped the political structure of early Polynesian settlements. Some groups formed kin-based chiefdoms. Others split into competing factions. A few fell apart entirely. You feel it happening in miniature here, rivalries sprouting like weeds. But so does cooperation. One person builds a drying rack for seaweed. Another designs a communal compost heap. You find yourself sharing a hammock with someone who used to annoy you on the canoe. Necessity makes strange roommates. And then there's the pig. He returns every morning, usually with a new attitude and increasingly daring maneuvers. One morning, he tries to roll the food gourd downhill. Another time, he makes off with an entire basket of cooked yams. You almost admire him. Finally, someone suggests a pig trap. It involves coconuts, vines, and a lot of wishful thinking. It fails immediately. Still, the effort becomes a kind of bonding exercise. After the trap collapses for the 3rd time, everyone laughs so hard they forget to argue over breakfast. You sit in the dirt, cheeks sore from smiling, and realize something important: laughter might be the rarest resource on the island. You need more of it. That night you start a story circle. No rules. Just tales, true, half true, or complete nonsense. You begin with the story of the time a flying fish slapped the navigator mid-sentence, and she still didn't break eye contact with the horizon. By the end of the evening, your stomach hurts from laughing. So does your chest, but in a good way. Later, you lie back on your woven mat under the stars. The fire's embers pulse gently like a heartbeat. The pig snores somewhere in the trees. The garden sleeps and you swear the kumara sprouts have grown half a finger's length. You smile. Land life is messier than you expected. Trickier. It demands more than paddling and prayers. But it gives back too. Just enough to make it worth waking up again tomorrow. The sun rises molten and huge, as if someone rolled a flaming coconut across the ocean's edge. You blink away the sleep from your eyes and stretch your joints, creaking like an old canoe. Today smells different. Earthier. You walk barefoot to the garden and see why the soil is smoking. No, not literally smoking, not fire. But the blackness, the heat radiating upward, the feather-light ash covering the surface like powdered night. It's all from the burn you helped manage yesterday. You're building gardens of ash now. Welcome to slash and burn farming, where destruction becomes creation, and smoke means something is finally going right. You helped chop down the undergrowth near the ridge. Ferns, shrubs, tangled vines. The trees were spared, but the floor of the forest was dry brittle, begging for change. You watched the fire spread low and fast, fed by old palm fronds and cracked branches, the wind steering the blaze like an invisible farmer. Afterward, when the smoke cleared, the clearing looked like a charcoal painting. Empty, quiet, raw. But the elders had nodded satisfied. This is how you make sweet potatoes thrive. Volcanic soil, ash-enriched, cleared of competition, this is their ideal bed. Sweet potatoes like it hot loose and slightly chaotic. Much like some of the people in your canoe. Today, you and the others are prepping that ash-covered earth for planting. First, you rake away the bigger chunks, half-burned sticks, blackened husks, a rock that looks suspiciously like a melted turtle. Then with digging sticks, you turn the soil, mixing the ash into the top layers. It's surprisingly satisfying work. Rhythmic. Crunch, twist, lift. Crunch, twist, lift. You start humming. The others pick it up. Before long, you've got a full chorus off-key but enthusiastic echoing across the clearing. You pause, sweat trickling down your temples, and notice something beautiful. The ground beneath you, where yesterday there was tangled mess, is now alive with potential. You run your fingers through the ash-dusted dirt and feel warmth. Fertility. Maybe even forgiveness. Polynesian agricultural knowledge was deep, far deeper than you'd imagined when you were still a wave-weary paddler. It wasn't just planting and hoping. It was science passed through chance. Astronomy, soil chemistry, plant biology, hydrology, all disguised as stories. You remember an old chant that says the roots seek the fire's gift. You used to think it was poetic nonsense. Now it makes perfect sense. Some believe early Polynesian farmers learned to track mineral content by tasting soil. Others say they read the land through plants. If wild yams thrived here, so would your crops. And when things failed, they adapted. Sweet potatoes weren't native to every island, but you made them belong. Historians still debate whether volcanic ash really made crops flourish faster. Some argue the benefit was short-lived, just a season or two before fertility faded. Others think the ash altered pH levels in long-lasting ways. You're not a soil scientist. But today, as you sink your digging stick into warm, crumbly earth, you're pretty sure something good is happening here. Nearby, someone sets up a stone boundary to mark the new plots. It's more than organization, it's memory. A map, so that generations from now will know where the first harvest began. You help carry stones, some heavy enough to make your knees sing protest. But it's worth it. Later, during a break, you sit under the shade of a banana tree and eat roasted breadfruit with coconut. One of your crewmates brings over a fist-sized rock and plops it in front of you with a grin. Fertility stone, they say. Place it in the corner of the garden, and the kumara will multiply like mosquitoes. You raise an eyebrow. How do you know worked for my uncle? Or maybe it was his chickens. Hard to say. You plant it anyway. Tradition, science, superstition. They're all braided together out here. You no longer separate them. If rubbing your forehead with charcoal before planting helps the roots grow well, your forehead's going to look a little goth today. As the day stretches on, the plots take shape. Curved rows, staggered, spacing little mounds like sleeping turtles scattered across the ash-rich soil. You plant cuttings with care, making sure the shoots point upward, the ends tucked just deep enough to stay moist, but not drown. You whisper to each one. Not words exactly, just encouragement. When the sun finally dips low and shadows stretch across the ridge, you step back and look at what you've built. Not a kingdom, not a village yet, but something better, a system. A method for coaxing life out of ruin. You walk back to camp, dusted in ash, reeking of soil and ambition. That night, you lie beside the fire and stare up at the stars. The canoe sits offshore now, bobbing gently in the tide, no longer your home, but still part of you. Around you, the others snore, whisper, or hum themselves to sleep. You close your eyes and dream of roots pushing downward slow and patient, of vines crawling over warm ground leaves opening to morning light. You dream of digging one up months from now, plump, sweet, perfectly orange, and tasting survival. And you think maybe fire is a kind of love after all. Morning rises soft and slow, diffused through mist clinging to the trees like ghostly cobwebs. You wake to the sound of chanting, low, rhythmic, not quite singing, not quite speaking. It pulls you from your dreams gently like a tide. You sit up and follow the sound barefoot, through dew-wet ferns and curling vines. The clearing where you burned the earth yesterday is now surrounded by people holding offerings, fronds, flowers, bowls of water, and little bundles of leaves tied with fibers and beads. The navigator stands in the center, arms outstretched, speaking into the mist. A ritual. You hang back, not wanting to interrupt, but someone gestures you forward. So you step in, quietly, reverently joining the circle. It's not a flashy ceremony, no fireworks, no theatrics, but something about it feels heavy with meaning. She finishes her chant, bends low, and places a carved shell into the soil at the edge of the garden. Then, in near silence, each person steps forward and does the same, offering a token to the land, the gods, or whatever silent forces they believe whisper in the wind. When it's your turn, you realize you have nothing prepared. No charm, no polished stone, no ancestral bead. So you reach into your pouch and pull out the shell bead. You found a few days ago, the one with the tiny hole smoothed by time. You hold it a moment longer, then press it into the soil beside the nearest sweet potato sprout. It feels right. Polynesian agriculture wasn't just about tools and techniques, it was spiritual. The gods had domains: Orongo, god of cultivated food; Lono, deity of fertility and growth; Tain, tied to forests and creation. Before planting, you sought their blessing. Before harvest, you gave thanks, sometimes with chants, sometimes with offerings, always with humility. There's a sense among your crewmates, an unspoken agreement that growing food is a kind of conversation. You don't just take from the land. You ask. You listen. You respond. It makes sense, really. When you're this dependent on the whims of weather, soil, and unseen fungi, a little supernatural insurance seems wise. As the sun strengthens and the mist burns away, the ceremony ends. People begin their tasks. Some head to the lagoon for fish traps. Others tend to sapling breadfruit trees or gather pandanus leaves for weaving. You stay behind. You kneel by the sweet potatoes, the soil warm under your knees, and whisper a little joke under your breath. Something about how they'd better grow, or you'll be forced to eat more of that fermented taro paste that tastes like angry glue. You swear, one sprout wiggles. A few hours later, you're helping with water collection when someone shouts. Loud. Urgent. You drop the gourd and run back to the garden, heart thudding. For a second, you fear the pig returned, or the sweet potatoes got stepped on, or a storm rolled in. But it's none of that. They're sprouting. Not just one. Not two. Nearly all of them. Tiny green shoots poking through the black ash like baby fingers reaching for sunlight. You crouch down and stare, giddy. You want to shout, or cry, or dance. You settle for grinning so hard your face hurts. Everyone gathers around. The navigator nods solemnly. The gods are listening. Someone else mutters, or the soil likes ash. You all laugh, and someone offers a celebratory handful of grilled crab. It's rubbery and undersalted, but you eat it like it's roasted duck. That night, the fire burns higher. There's music, real music with rhythm tapped on hollowed logs, and chants that rise and fall with the waves. Someone starts a story circle again. This time, the tales are about growth. A woman describes a tree that grew overnight after she sang to it. A man tells of a garden that only flourished after burying a piece of his mother's hair in the soil. You're not sure if they're metaphor or memory. Both, maybe. You share a story, too, not about miracles, but about that one kumara on the canoe that grew a sprout in the middle of a storm. How you almost ate it, how you didn't. People smile, some nod. One person claps you on the back. Later, as the fire dies and you tuck into your mat, you find your thoughts wandering again, not to danger but to meaning. Historians often overlook this part of survival. They focus on tools, not totems. On calories, not ceremonies. But now you're starting to understand why that old woman insisted on chanting to her yam garden every morning. It's not just faith. It's relationship. You roll onto your side facing the garden and watch the stars blink overhead. You think, what if the gods are just memories growing louder when they're sung to? And what if sweet potatoes are their love letters wrapped in roots? The breeze is different today. Not the cool leafy kind that carries the scent of breadfruit blossoms or the wet stone freshness of a spring-fed breeze. No, this one smells like talking, like curiosity stirred up by possibility. You can feel it before you even open your eyes. You sit up, stretch, and see two of your crewmates standing at the edge of the camp facing inland. One is shading their eyes with a flattened palm. The other is whispering, excited and uncertain. You shuffle over, still wiping sleep from your eyes. What is it? The first one doesn't look away. Just points, tracks. You follow the line of their finger. Faint impressions in the mud bending around a fallen log and vanishing into the ferns. Not pig tracks. Not yours. These are different. Wide, human-shaped. You don't say it, but it passes through all your minds at once. Someone else is here. It shouldn't surprise you. Polynesia is a chain of secrets, some spoken, some still hidden beneath ferns and time. This island might have been mapped by your ancestors, or stumbled upon by others long before your voyage. People move, always have, across oceans, over ridgelines, through stories. Historians still debate the exact sequence of settlement across the Pacific. Which islanders met which others? Was there true contact between Polynesia and South America before Europeans? The sweet potato itself, your precious Kumara, is at the center of that swirling conversation. Some suggest Polynesians made the journey east, touched the edge of the Andes, and returned with the sacred route. Others believe South Americans traveled westward. Then there are theories that make your navigator scoff, claims that the tuber floated over on its own. Alone. Purposeful. Like a veggie Moses. You squint at the track again. It's fading already under the morning heat. But it was there. It means something. The group gathers. There's murmuring. Ideas fly. Should we follow them? Maybe leave food. Or gifts. What if they're watching us? You notice the navigator hasn't spoken. She's crouched by the print head, tilted lips pursed. Finally, she stands. We wait, she says simply. And so you do. But waiting doesn't mean idling. You tend the garden, checking for pests and rot. You help lash new water gourds into a shady rack near the spring. You repair a split in the canoe's outrigger arm with fiber and resin from a bleeding tree. But your mind keeps drifting. At dusk, you find a fish trap has been moved. Not by wind. Not by animals. The rocks have been shifted too precisely to be random. No fish inside. Someone's watching. Later that night, you place a small bundle by the trail. Nothing too precious. A banana, a polished shell, and a twist of smoked crab. A peace offering. A hello. When you wake the next morning, the bundle is gone. In its place, a gourd. Not one of yours. It's shaped differently. The weave around its neck is finer, looser, delicate, like something from a different village. Inside, sweet potato slices. Dried, chewy, sweet like caramel. You stare into the gourd for a long moment. Then you pass it around. No one speaks while they chew. You want to chase them, to thank them. But the navigator shakes her head. Let them come, and maybe they will. But until then, your mind wanders further beyond this island, beyond even the canoe that carried you here. What if all of Polynesia was like this? Once one island after another visited and revisited. Not empty lands waiting for flags, but homes interconnected, alive, talking to each other through gifts, songs and shared crops. It changes how you see your Kumara. Not just food, not just survival, but a message. Something carried across impossible distances by people who didn't consider them impossible. You go to the garden and kneel by the newest sprout. It's strong now. 4 leaves, each dark green, with that slight purplish sheen. You run a finger along one edge and think, this plant has traveled farther than I ever will. That night, you add a verse to the song you've been singing as you plant. It goes, root of water, child of flame, born in mist given a name. If I forget where you have been, let your vines remind my skin. You hum it as the stars rise. Somewhere beyond the trees, someone else might be listening. You're ankle deep in the lagoon, humming your planting song, and trying to coax his stubborn crab from under a rock when the sky shifts. It happens in that slow, sneaky way that bad weather always seems to arrive. First, the color bright blue drained to pewter smeared with clouds, the shade of bruised plums. Then, the breeze gone like the island holding its breath. The water flattens unnaturally. Then you feel it. A drop of rain. Then another. Then the wind returns not in whispers, but in lungfuls. You drop your crabstick and sprint for the canoe shelter. By the time you reach the camp, the downpour has started. Rain lashes sideways, driven by gusts so strong they bend the palms like dancers mid-bow. The sea foams white at the edges, and the lagoon rises tugging hard at the mooring line around your canoe. Everyone moves fast, muscle memory activated. You haul firewood under cover, lash down the roof fronds, check the lashings on the storage gourds. Someone's already thrown a tarp over the kumara patch. But it's too late for some things. The tide surges up into the edge of the garden, carving rivulets through the fresh mounds. You watch helplessly as one young sprout is yanked loose and carried away like a twig. You shout, run forward, try to scoop soil back over the roots, but the rain stings your skin and someone pulls you back. Let it go, they yell. You do. You have to. The storm rages into the night, turning your island into a slapstick version of its former self. Palm fronds litter the ground. The canoe knocks against its moorings like a giant toddler refusing a nap. Your hammock is soaked, the fire long gone. You curl into your mat, shivering and annoyed at the universe. You thought reaching land was the hard part, but nature clearly disagrees. The next morning, everything smells like wet bark and seaweed. The sun peeks out apologetically like a friend who partied too hard the night before. You step out to assess the damage. Some of the garden's intact. Some of it isn't. 3 mounds are flattened. 2 sprouts snapped. A few more buried under sand and detritus. Your grandma plot has been reduced to mush. You feel like crying. Instead, you dig. The others join in. No speeches. Just movement. Gently lifting the bent vines. Scraping away the mud. Replanting what can be saved. You find one kumara slip still clinging to its place leaves, shredded stem drooping. You dig a new mound, tuck it in, and whisper, "You're tougher than this." As the day warms, you rebuild and complain loudly. Your navigator loses a sandal and swears in a dialect you don't even recognize. Someone discovers a half-buried fish in the middle of the garden, presumably dropped by a confused wave. The pig. He slept through the whole storm in a hollow log and now trots around like he deserves a trophy. You laugh, part frustration, part relief. You're learning that storms don't end your journey. They just reroute it. Later that day, the traps are empty. Again. No fish. You chew on a leaf for flavor and pretend it's soup. Then someone shouts. Farther out in the bay, a canoe approaches. Not yours. Another outrigger, smaller, single-hulled, painted with bold black stripes along the prow. There are 2 people aboard, one paddling, one holding something above their head wrapped in woven leaves. You freeze. The others gather. Some raise hands in greeting. One of the elders murmurs, "Visitors." The canoe glides onto shore. The paddler is young, barely older than you, face scarred with a tattoo, like a curling wave. The other steps off, cradling the bundle. It's a gift. Inside sweet potatoes. You can't help it, you laugh. A sharp, surprised, almost hysterical sound. All this effort, all this survival, and now here come strangers bearing the exact thing you nearly cried over 2 hours ago. They speak your tongue. Or at least a cousin of it. You fumble through words, gesture to the garden, to the battered mounds, to the soaked shelter. They nod. Offer help. And soon, you're all digging together. Side by side. You learn that their island lies eastward. 2 days by canoe. They saw your firelight a week ago. Waited. Watched. Then came. Not to invade, but to connect. To share. The debate from weeks ago returns to your mind, the one about how sweet potatoes got here. You still don't have the answer. But this feels like a clue. You roast a few of their kumara that night over a relit fire. They're smaller than yours, paler inside, but sweet and dense. You eat until your belly aches and your heart feels full. Afterward, you sit by the embers and whisper thanks, not just to the visitors or the roots, but to the sea that both scattered and stitched together these pieces of humanity. Storms may throw you off course, but sometimes they steer you toward each other. Night falls slower now, not because the sun lingers longer, but because you linger more at the edge of the firelight, watching the new arrivals trace their fingers over the designs painted on your canoe. listening to them sing songs you half understand, half feel in your chest like a drumbeat you'd forgotten you knew. The striped canoe rests beside yours, now lashed gently to a tree with vines. It smells different, its timber soaked in some resin. You don't recognize its deck scattered with carved shells and knotted strings. You squat beside the paddler Rangi, he says his name is, and study one of those strings. It's dyed crimson with knots spaced at odd intervals. You ask what it's for. Map, he says, holding it out. Not for land, for the time. You frown. Time. He smiles, teeth white in the firelight. Days paddled, nights drifted. Knots remember what I forget. A memory rope. Later, he pulls back his tunic and shows you the tattoos covering his chest and ribs. Spirals, waves small triangular glyphs. You recognize one. It's the symbol your navigator uses for the star house above the eastern reef. It's inked over his heart. These are my islands, he says. My winds, my wrong turns. You look down at your own arms. No markings? Not yet. Rangi grins. You're still writing. Polynesian voyagers didn't leave behind scrolls or charts the way later empires did. But their bodies, they were the books. Skin mapped with stories, songs braided with directions, dance as cartography. Historians still argue whether tattooed maps were accurate or symbolic. You're starting to think? Both. The next morning, Rangi offers to show you his memory route. You paddle out with him in the smaller canoe. Just you, him, and a knot rope draped across the seat like a lazy snake. He taps each knot with a finger, eyes closed. This was when the sea turned against us. Tap. This one. The night I lost my paddle and used my sandal. Tap. Here. We saw smoke, but it was only the sea playing tricks. He hands you the rope. You hold it like it might break. The fibers are warm from the sun. Each knot is like a heartbeat. And suddenly the idea of remembering by muscle makes sense. When you return, you find the navigator and one of the new arrivals bent over a palm mat drawing in charcoal. Not pictures, rhythmic dots, curls, stacked marks. Not a chart. A song. You ask, and she says they're transcribing a chant that describes the winds of the Southern Ocean. Sing it wrong, she warns, and you miss the reef. You raise your hands. No pressure. Later that day, Rangi shows you how to build a navigation stick chart, not like the Western kind with degrees and latitudes. This one uses bent twigs and coconut fiber, mimicking the curve of swells around islands. Here, he says, tapping one node, this is your island. The waves bend like this when you pass it. You don't see it, but you feel it. Feel it with your butt, you ask, half joking. Yes, he replies, completely serious. You realize you've never thought about your rear end as a navigation tool before, but out here it might be your most reliable compass. They also teach you star songs tunes that rise and fall with each constellation. One note for Venus, another for the Pleiades. A lullaby of light. You sing it one night under the sky and feel the stars listen back. There's a moment sitting on the shore where Rangi taps your arm and asks, "How many knots are in your rope now?" You blink. "I don't have one." He shakes his head. "Yes, you do. It's just invisible. It's in your hands, in your footsteps, in your garden. You think of the mounds of earth, the sweet potatoes surviving the storm, the songs you've hummed while planting, the laughter over burnt fish, the gifts left by invisible hands. You think, maybe he's right. You're knotted together by story. Every bite, every song, every scar, even the pig. Oh yes, he's still around. Now thoroughly part of the village, smug and chunky. Someone braided a cord around his neck with tiny shells. You suspect he's now technically considered a relative. At twilight, Rangi takes a piece of bark cloth and draws something with a charcoal nub. It's rough, but you recognize it. A canoe, a mountain, and a row of 3 sprouting kumara. Below it, a line of dots curving toward a spiral. This is your rope, he says, handing it to you. You hold it like treasure. That night, lying under a sky so full of stars, it feels like it might cave in from the weight. You whisper the directions back to yourself. 1 knot, the day you left. 2, the night of the flying fish. 3, the kumara sprouting after the storm. 4, the visitor's canoe. 5, this very moment when you realize you're no longer just surviving. You're becoming a story. The sky turns the color of bruised plum again. You should have known. The birds flew inland at dawn. The waves came in at odd angles, crosshatch swells slapping the hull of the canoe like impatient hands. And the wind smelled metallic like whetstone and warning. Storms don't usually come this soon after another. But this one isn't a storm. It's a failure. You're in the garden when you first feel it. Your digging stick hits something soft. Not the good kind of soft either. You dig deeper and your heart sinks. Rot. The sweet potato vine you uncover is mushy. Its root pulpy and dark. Not all of them. But this mound. This one is gone. You check another. Same. A third slightly better, but the leaves are yellowing. You step back, shaking your head. Something's wrong with the soil. Too wet. Not enough airflow. Too much ash. You thought you had the rhythm. Down plant water shade sing. But now the song falters. You call for the others. Together, you inspect each patch, murmuring, poking, brushing aside leaf litter. The diagnosis isn't good. Fungus. Or maybe beetles. Could be poor drainage. You don't have a microscope, but you have eyes and fingers, and the smell of decay creeping into your nose like guilt. The mood turns sharp. Blame flies before the tools do. You watered too late in the day. No, you mulched too thick. It was the visitors' batch they brought disease. It spirals quickly. Accusations. Old tensions resurface like mold on breadfruit. Rangi steps in, hands up, voice calm. But even his presence doesn't cool the air much. One elder storms off. Another starts pulling up vines, like she's trying to punish the soil. You stand frozen, unsure whether to defend your methods or hide behind the pig, who has wisely decided to vanish for the day. Later, someone suggests rationing, just in case. You hate the sound of that word. Rationing. It tastes like canoe salt and fear. You thought you were past that. But now it's back wrapped in the bitter leaf of uncertainty. Dinner is quiet. A little too quiet. The fish traps yielded nothing. Again. The lagoon's been strange lately, fish, scarce water, cloudy. Some mutter that the spirits are angry. Others say it's just bad timing. Rangi takes a bite of taro and glances at you. Sometimes gardens fail, he says softly. Even good ones. You nod, but the words don't stick. Because this garden was your garden. The sweet potatoes were your roots. And now some of them are melting back into the earth like dreams left too long in the sun. The next day, the rationing plan begins. Less breadfruit. Half portions of smoked fish when there is fish. Coconut meat sliced thinner. One small tuber per person if it's not mush. Tempers fray. Two people argue over whether a gourd was dipped into twice. Someone forgets to share a pawpaw. You catch someone digging up a barely sprouted kumara in secret and feel your stomach drop. You want to yell. You want to demand unity. But you also understand. Hunger doesn't ask for manners. It gnaws. It tightens. It changes people. At night around the fire, the songs are quieter. The laughter has vanished. And that's when the elder woman suggests something that makes everyone freeze. We need to make a stew. Not just any stew. A ritual stew. The kind made in old times when crops failed, when pigs died, when storms came, 3 at a time, and didn't leave room for hope. You've heard of them. Everyone has. A blend of what remains. Bones roots leave sometimes odd things. Bats, crab's moss, even charms ground into paste. A stew that's part offering, part desperation. The navigator nods slowly. Yes, a reckoning stew. You gulp. It's decided. Tomorrow you'll each bring something edible or meaningful or both and contribute. Not to feast, but to reset the spirit of the place. To show the land you're not giving up. That you're willing to give back. You barely sleep that night. When morning comes, you wrap the one remaining firm kumara from your original batch in a banana leaf and carry it like an heirloom. Others bring scraps. Salt. A coconut shell etched with a prayer. Even the pig contributes a mouthful of mushrooms he dropped at the elder's feet before trotting away, like he knew what he was doing. The stew is boiled low and slow in a carved stone pot, stirred with a paddle, seasoned with silence. You gather around as it simmers, the aroma strange, but somehow comforting. No one speaks as it's ladled out. You eat. It tastes like earth and salt and memory. It tastes like surrender and survival. And something shifts. You look around. The tension breaks a little. A few shoulders drop. Someone chuckles when the pig tries to steal the pot. Later that night, a breeze returns. Not the harsh, angry kind. A gentle one. It smells like flowers you didn't notice were blooming again. You drift to sleep with a belly just full enough and a mind heavy with humility. Not all gardens thrive. But people. Sometimes they grow stronger when things fall apart. The next morning arrives on a hush. Not a quiet from absence, but a quiet of expectation. Like the island is holding its breath waiting to see what you'll do after that stew of surrender. The air feels cooler, gentler. The vines in the garden glisten with dew, no new rot in sight. It's not a miracle, but it's a sign. You exhale. For once, the ground isn't shifting under your feet or under your sweet potatoes. Later, the lookout shouts. You rush to the shore, still chewing on a half-roasted breadfruit chunk. Another canoe approaches. This one is different. Heavier, wider, double-hulled. Its sail painted with streaks of crimson and deep indigo. A trading canoe. It glides into the lagoon like it belongs here. And maybe it does. Or maybe this is the first visit of many. You help secure the mooring ropes, shake hands, and nod heads. Gifts are exchanged: baskets of salted fish, dried bananas, bundles of cord, and, of course, the sacred guest gift roots, sweet potatoes. Again, but not yours and not Rangi's. These are long, pale-fleshed ones with skin like bark and a scent faintly smoky even before cooking. New. Different. You hold one like a fragile relic. Another page in the story. There's a feast that night, spontaneous, enthusiastic, chaotic. Laughter rings across the camp, like bells shaken free after a long silence. The new visitors bring songs you've never heard, and rhythms that make your hips move before your brain agrees. You eat. You dance. You grin until your jaw hurts. Rangi finds you by the fire and tosses you a roasted kumara. Taste it, he says. Theirs. You bite in. The skin crackles, the flesh steams, and your tongue meets something earthy sweet, and spiced with ash, maybe clove. It's subtle, but unmistakable. You close your eyes and chew slowly. Good, you say? He grins. They grow on rocks. Rocks, barely any soil. They pile kelp and fish guts burn it, and plant directly. You blink. That shouldn't work. Tell that to your mouth, he says, tossing another into the coals. That night around the fire, stories ripple again. You learn about islands with red sand and ones with cliffs like sleeping giants, places where coconuts grow without trees harvested from drifting mats of tangled roots. You laugh not because you disbelieve, but because why not? The Polynesian world was never a chain of isolated dots. It was a web knotted together by wind and wave memory and myth, paddled across by people who didn't see oceans as barriers, but as bridges. Historians argue about whether disease spread between early island chains through this kind of contact. Some say trade brought more than taro and shell beads. Sometimes sickness followed the currents too. Others believe the isolation was enough to keep communities safe until European contact changed everything. You're not thinking about pathogens tonight, though. You're thinking about connections. After the feast, the elders meet with the traders to talk about exchange. You don't go. That's their work. Instead, you walk the edge of the lagoon with Rangi, both of you skipping flat stones that bounce once or twice before surrendering to the sea. He pauses. You ever think of sailing on? You raise an eyebrow? There are islands farther west, he says. 3 days, maybe 4. Big ones. I've never been. You consider that. The thought of paddling away from your sprouting garden, your hammock, your pig, now a full-fledged member of society, who might be running for village council. But then again, the canoe still floats, and your feet still itch. I'd have to ask the sweet potatoes for permission, you joke. Rangi laughs. Then start now. They can be stubborn. The next day, you walk to the garden and kneel beside the newest row. The storm-broken vines you replanted are thriving, green strong, crawling fast over the black earth. You see buds forming, tiny hints of the harvest to come. You touch one leaf lightly. I might go, you whisper. Not forever. Just onward. The leaf flutters. You decide its approval. That evening, you begin weaving a new rope, your own memory line. First, not the day you touched land. Second, the rot. Third, the stew. Fourth, the arrival. Fifth, the question. More knots will come. Later, you add a shell to the end, one with a spiral so perfect it looks drawn. You name the rope Moana's thread, the ocean's reminder that your journey doesn't end where land begins. The pig. He tries to eat it. You swat him away. Rangi watches with amusement. Maybe you tie that rope around your waist, he says, so you don't forget who you are when you leave. You grin. I'll tie one around him so he doesn't follow me. That night, you don't dream of sweet potatoes. You dream of waves, endless and glowing, and a new island waiting beyond the dark. You stand barefoot at the shoreline, toes half buried in damp sand, watching the tide play with the edges of your canoe. It rocks gently like it's already whispering hurry up in a language only paddlers understand. Behind you, the village is waking, slowly cooking fires crackling. Someone laughing over a pot, the pig trying to sneak off with a gourd again. It feels strange to leave, not because you're afraid not anymore, but because you're rooted here now. And roots don't like movement, even metaphorical ones. But you've made your choice. Rangi stands beside you, tightening the last lashings on the sail. His rope of memory knots is already tied around his chest like a sash. You've made one too. Not as long, not as tidy, but yours. You turn back one last time. The sweet potato garden hums in the distance, alive and green, soaking up the morning mist like a sponge. New shoots shimmer silver with dew. You spot the crooked vine that grew sideways during the storm, stubborn and ridiculous. You smile. Beside the garden, someone's carved a signpost from driftwood. On it, a spiral, and beneath it a single word inked in charcoal: Kumara. Simple, quiet, the root of everything. The others gather to say goodbye, not grandly, not with trumpets or drums, but with gifts slipped into your pack when you weren't looking. A packet of smoked crab, a woven armband, a miniature carving of the pig. That one you strongly suspect he made himself. The navigator presses her forehead to yours and murmurs a chant, short, sweet, probably rude. You laugh, and she slaps your shoulder with mock annoyance. Then just before you step onto the canoe, someone calls out. It's one of the elders. She holds something in both hands, wrapped in leaves. You take it. Unwrap it. Inside, a roasted sweet potato still warm. First of your second garden, she says softly. Eat it when you miss this place. You nod, unable to speak. The canoe pushes off. You paddle slowly at first. Rangi adjusts the sail, catching the wind just right. The outrigger hums against the waves. You look over the side and see the shore drifting away, the spiral post getting smaller and smaller until it vanishes behind a cluster of palms. The ocean swells beneath you. It's the same sea that tried to drown you, the same sea that carried your crate of roots, the same sea that spat you onto an island and whispered, survive. Now it says something different. Grow. You find your rhythm. Stroke, breathe, stroke, breathe. The breeze picks up. Rangi sings quietly. A song about stars. You don't know all the words, but you hum the harmony. Your rope of memory knots bumps against your chest with every paddle stroke. You think of everything you're carrying. The stories. The salt in your bones. The stew you'll never forget. The route that changed everything. Somewhere far ahead, another island waits. And when you get there, you'll plan again. You'll remember. You'll grow. Now as the canoe fades into the silver-blue haze of the horizon, let's slow things down together. Let your breath match the quiet rhythm of the waves. Long, gentle, steady. Each inhale carries the scent of salt and sweet earth. Each exhale softens the edges of the day. Imagine yourself resting in that outrigger sail, flapping lazily above the ocean, stretching out like an endless blanket beneath you. The world is soft now. The wind hums low and soothing. No urgency, no hurry. Just the rocking motion of a cradle, made from water and woven wood. You feel the warmth of the sun on your face. Not hot, just enough to remind you that you're safe. Alive. Drifting toward something peaceful. Around your neck, your rope of memory knots rest against your chest, holding all your stories, all your growth, all your small, brave moments. The horizon blurs a little more. The sweet potatoes are planted. The garden grows without you for now, but you carry it with you. In your breath, your heartbeat, your dreams. And as your eyes grow heavy, as your mind floats gently toward sleep, know this. You've voyaged far. You've survived more than you thought you could. And you're still floating, still singing, still growing. One star, one wave, one dream at a time. Sweet dreams, Voyager.